Okay. Welcome everyone to our second webinar. We are part of the Jacobs Institute, and we are happy that all of you have joined us and joined in on the Changemaker Challenge. I would like to welcome everyone who has just joined onto the challenge. We do have a few new people who have added in, and so if you have any questions along the way, just make sure that you type it into our chat, and we will do our best to answer your questions that you have as we go throughout the presentation. Since we do have at least one person who is new to this webinar, I would like to take a moment to introduce the team just briefly. My name is Alina Mitchell, and I'm the Learning Experience Specialist here at the Jacobs Institute. A little bit about my background is I was a program coordinator for Morehouse School of Medicine, working with a STEAM enrichment program there. I also was a teacher for 9 years. I taught middle school and language arts. And then I also am an instructional designer here, and I was a principal as well for 3 years in Southern California. So I'm just happy to be working with Patful and to provide any support to teachers as you are progressing through the program. Lisa or Monty, did you want to chime in?
Hello, everybody. I'm Lisa Dolly, and sorry I'm not on camera today. I'm at home sick, but I'm here and happy to be with you. I'm the executive director of the Jacobs Institute. My background, I'm a former professor of educational technology. I'm a co-founder of several companies, including educational technology startups.
And hi all, I'm Monty Kalish. I'm the Director of Technology, Strategy and Development for the Jacobs Institute. My background is in technology and education, which is a great combination to bring us here today. I apologize, I'm actually in an airport today, but I'm here and will chime in and join in as best I can, but I'm here to help if we need anything. Okay. Thank you, Alina.
Thank you, and thank you again, teachers. We appreciate you, coming in for this webinar today. And we just wanted to basically touch bases with you, get an idea of how things are progressing with your students, to address any challenges, any questions, just anything that we can provide to help give you some support for today. So a little bit about our overview for our webinar is we want to just again take a moment to review the timeline. We would like to just remind you a little bit about some of our incentives throughout the challenge. We would like to do a progress check as well. There we go. And then actually talk about the Ideate phase, and then to answer any questions that you have. Okay, so just a little reminder of our timeline here. As you can see, we are at our second webinar. We've kicked off in January 16th. Now we are going to go over our Ideate information, and our next webinar will be March 3rd, March 31st, but just key date for you all to remember, very important date is May 1st. That is when the video pitches will be submitted. And then of course, the actual culmination of the challenge will be May 16th. So how's everything looking for you all with the timeline? Are you feeling comfortable with that? You can feel free to type in during the chat.
I feel comfortable with the timeline. I love that there's so much time between the initial challenge and May 1st. It's giving me a lot of freedom to work with the kids with depth versus trying to get through something really, really fast. So I really appreciate the timeline.
Okay, wonderful. Anyone else want to chime in? Or you can definitely, I see Colleen chimed in, and there were a few people saying that the timeline looks great. So that's wonderful. I have a few questions that I would like to follow up with you all. But before we do so, just wanted to remind you quickly that we do have Storyteller Awards. And that's just an opportunity for you and your students to post pictures of their progress along the way. It could be in the form of photos, in the form of videos. And so we will be checking our social media outlets. We have Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook. We will be checking those to just look to see who's posting pictures, and we will sporadically give just impromptu gift cards for you all, but you must use the hashtag JI Changemakers. I think we have one or two schools thus far to do so, and we appreciate you. We just want to, just create a forum where we can share and just see how it's going. If teachers, if you feel, uncomfortable with your students posting on social media, then you can definitely post on behalf of your student teams also. Okay. Keep it moving. All right, so now's the time where I would love to hear from you all. If your volume is muted, you can unmute when you are speaking. But I have a few questions to ask of you. So the first question would be, how are your students progressing through the understand phase? And I'd like to just take a moment to just hear from you all.
Hi,
This is
it's
Lori
Sasha.
Williams. I'm
Sorry,
go ahead.
I heard from Sasha.
I'm brand new and missed the first one. This is Lori.
Oh, okay.
Missed the first webinar, so I'm totally playing catch up with even learning the website. But I have started with my students on brainstorming ideas and trying to choose issues.
Okay. Wonderful.
And Alina, as I said to you before, where my students are is they have done the understanding. They're going through the interview as the documenting and starting interviews shortly. But before they start their interviews, I'm going through their questions, which is the activity 1. So that's where I'm at with my students.
Okay, and so you are approaching it from like a collective, so you all are working on the same activity together at the same time?
No, not at all. I give them deadlines.
Oh, okay.
Okay. And because majority of my class are boys, and boys can, I hate to say this, but boys can slack off sometimes. They talk about topics that are so far out in left field, so you have to keep them confined. So I give them deadlines. I have soft and hard deadlines, and so in order for me to have them continue, as I said, they need to interview people, and it's just not like I'm going to interview each other. So I tell them, okay, by this date, I need to see your questions, because if I'm going to set up an interview with someone, I need to tell the person they're going to call them at this time frame. So that means you have to have your questions ready. So absolutely. I give them soft deadlines, and then we take it from there.
Okay, wonderful. Anyone else?
Hi, it's Sasha. I'm sorry if you hear me sniffling in the background. I've kind of haven't really been in the classroom because I've been sick. So getting back this week, last time that we sat, we talked about the global goals and what was it that they wanted to seek out, and kind of having them do that creative, critical thinking phase of what it is that they wanted to tackle specifically. Broke them up into groups, their choice. So I made them understand that, the successes and the failures are your choices because you decided on who your groups are. And then kind of taking it from there, kind of getting back into the classroom. And they're really excited. They just want to make money. I'll be honest with you.
I love that. Okay, thank you for sharing.
No, thank you. Sorry. I'm going to mute myself so I don't sneeze or cough on you, or, virtually on you.
Sasha, it's interesting that you say that, because my groups, and I have 2 classes that are doing it, my 7th graders and my 8th graders. And it's interesting to see, because in both classes, I've had 2 groups that have fired members of their group. So that contract that you guys have in there was so handy, because I told them, I said, just as Sasha said, there's people that you're going to think you want to work with, and then you find out they're not working. So what's happened in one of my classes is I had 2 members kicked out of a group who then formed the group who couldn't work together. And so they kicked each other out of their own group. So now I have a young man who started today, actually 2 of them, they're now individually working. So they're no longer groups. So my question is, how does that work out? Can I have an individual? Because they've been kicked out of groups.
That's a really good question.
That is.
Monty, are you hearing this question?
I am, and I think our hope is that, we're hoping that this is a sort of a student team activity, so that there are teams between sort of 2 and 6 students, but ultimately that decision lies with you as the educator. So we are supportive, but our hope, honestly, at the end of the day, and you bring up a good scenario, but I think our hope is to also help encourage situations where students can work together, but that may or may not always be practical. So we will support a student team of 1 if that's how it works out.
And as I said, it would have been 2, but once again, they realized that as supposed friends as they are, they cannot work together. So now ultimately they've split. So I apologize, but we move forward. As I said, they are going to be required to do the same things as a group would, simply because they cannot get along with others or each other. Does not, for me, say that, okay, it negates the fact that you're going to not do everything. No, they're going to do everything. So please expect that.
I really appreciate you sharing that, Valerie, and just wanted to say thank you, because that is how innovation goes, right? Sometimes team members get kicked off or they want to leave, and helping students feel and experience that dynamic and learn how to deal with it, whether they stay on the team or whether they leave a team, is so important. It's such an important part of the development. So thank you so much for sharing what you're learning.
Quite welcome.
Definitely. Does anyone else want to chime in?
Hi. I'm really excited to start this with my sophomores. I got new students 2 weeks ago, and so I've been starting off with different systems and, getting them going on a whole bunch of other projects. And so we're planning on starting this this week, and it's in my English class, so we're going along with Lord of the Flies. So we're hoping that their groups are going to function much better than the boys on the island, and they're choosing their UN Sustainable Development Goals that they want to try to do well on. So that's how I'm kind of pairing it with some of the literature that we're doing, is that they have goals of making progress and like bettering our world, and what are some different things that we can research and do, and looking at the literature also alongside that. So we're starting it this week, and it's exciting to hear the progress that all of you are making, and I'm looking forward to that.
Wonderful. Thank you for sharing.
Yeah, I'm at the understage phase. We've done 1 and 2 and getting ready to start the interview process, but we're not sure on who we're allowed to interview, or how do we do the who do we contact type of thing. We're just stuck at this point. We don't know what to do for the interview process.
Okay. Well, I guess it depends upon which goal the students chose, and then who would be relevant for the particular problem that they are addressing. But they can ask anyone in their community, of course, with their, if their parents, if they're younger students.
Yeah.
Now, have they all submitted their ideas to you, like as far as like their project titles? Have they identified their goals yet?
Yes.
They have. Okay,
yes.
Awesome. So yeah, it would be, and Lisa and Monty, feel free to chime in, pulling from their community, maybe friends of their parents, could possibly be teachers, maybe people even experiencing the particular problem that they are addressing. But again, just emphasizing, if they are, younger students, encouraging them to talk with their parents, to arrange that.
Okay.
Someone told me about a model, and I haven't used it personally, but it was the idea of first circle, second circle, third circle. And your first circle is your parents and your immediate family, and just how do they understand the problem from their perspective. And then potentially, it depends on the grade level, but can they talk to their teachers about it? Can they actually go out and interview someone experiencing the problem? And so it's collecting data from different sources, and you could think about those layers and circles potentially. I think it's really open, and it depends on how close you can get to the people actually having the problem, I think.
Okay. Thank you very much.
Yeah, I don't know if that helps, but.
It does. It does. We're just, I was going way up there thinking I was trying to figure out how to find a professor and all this kind of stuff. And I'm like, oh, okay, I don't know. I have 9 different teams doing 9 different projects.
If I can jump in here with just some advice, I know I haven't introduced myself. I have my 3-year-old and my 1-year-old running around, so I'll probably be muted for most of it. But I'm Dana Weber. I teach at Kearney, and we're also in the understand phase. And I'm actually taking like all my 9th graders. So we have like 24 groups approximately that are going through it. And one thing that I found to be helpful is when we're going through the resources page on Packful, and as they start to investigate their SDGs a bit more closely, we actually do like intentional brainstorming around stakeholders when they're looking at some of that information so that they can start to think about all the different people that could be potentially affected. And then from there, once they've identified some stakeholders, my next step is to have them kind of look for different community resources where some of those stakeholders might exist if you are trying to go big, which it sounded like you were thinking about initially. So I hope that's helpful.
Yes, it is.
To see
Thank you so much.
familiar faces.
I was also going to mention stakeholders, but also a lot of our issues end up with populations that you may not want to be interviewing directly. And in that case, think about interviewing the groups that support those people. So in our particular case, because we're downtown campus, we have a lot of homeless population. And we wouldn't necessarily want our scholars going out and doing interviews with the homeless population, but we can go do interviews with organizations set up to serve that population. So that's another way to tap into interview resources.
Thank you.
Well, I would like to move on to our next question, which is, what are your students' overall reaction to Packful thus far? Are they, excited about it? Is it something that you're finding that you have to motivate them, a little bit more? Are some students struggling with it? I would just love to hear, how's it looking in regards to the reaction of your students?
Arlena, were you talking about the challenge or just the software Packful itself?
I would say both. It would
okay.
Probably primarily Packful, but it could be the challenge itself as well.
This is Trisha with Fulton School District. I haven't gotten as far as it sounds as if some of you got. However, my students in the past 3 days have shown signs of excitement, enthusiasm, and a lot of, I want to say, questioning. For example, today they were talking. I had a lesson from one of the UN websites where the children imagine what the world would look like in 2030, and they draw. There's like this roadmap, and I'll post it somewhere so everyone can see what I'm talking about. But basically, each team has a portion of a huge poster that you make that's like a 6-foot by 3-foot poster. And that team's part of the city, for example, they have to create the city that they would want in 2030 based on the sustainability goals. So what I saw today was a lot of bright-eyed and bushy-tailed kids who are very excited to create their city. And it was really, it was hard work. It was, there's a word for like a challenge that really feels good. And it was hard work that felt good because they would say something like, for example, one team, they drew a tree. And I said, okay, but that looks like a tree that I would see outside today. So how is the tree different in 2030 based on the sustainability goal that you have and what you want to do or create so that that tree looks different than it does today? So on the most part, they looked really excited and happy.
Awesome. I like that activity. That sounds nice.
I gotta find it and then share it with everyone.
Thank you. Thank you for that. Mm-hmm. Anyone else want to chime in? Reactions from your students? And just make sure when you're speaking that you just unmute it so we can all hear you.
Hi, it's Sasha again. I think I put on the chat, it really depends on the group. I feel some groups I have to motivate more than others. Some have just like kind of want to dive into it. I do have a higher ratio of male to female, but I just feel like it's my usual suspects that I have to really motivate. But kind of throwing in the whole you can earn money is a motivator sometimes for them. But we've been finishing a project and they just had BSA testing, which is our statewide testing, kind of like a practice test to that. So they've been a little burnt out and I was sick. So I will definitely be giving you more information next time, but I just wanted to chime in and say thank you for the suggestions, everyone.
Definitely, thank you for sharing. Does anyone, Sasha, with your comment, does anyone have any suggestions on maybe some things that are working within your classrooms for groups or students who may not be as motivated? Like, what are you using to kind of encourage them or excite them about this challenge?
I would say benchmarks. I think it's really great that we have these phases that kind of hold us accountable with the understand, ideate, and prototype, and then we have the tabs within, so that structure is great. But I think even within those tabs, there's so much to digest, and I know for my ninth graders, that can be a bit overwhelming. And so if there's ways that you can kind of build benchmarks in, so like I have had to go through and figure out what we're going to commit to within the time that we have, and then sometimes the benchmarks that I set are not exactly the benchmarks that are set within the Packful site. And so I found that to be a little bit more motivating because sometimes it sets a sense of urgency. This is such a grand project. And so I feel like if I can scaffold it and chunk it even more than it already is in Packful, so there's a higher sense of urgency. And then I feel like that's helped with buy-in.
Oh, wonderful. We appreciate you sharing that. So benchmarks and deadlines can help.
I think it's important that, again, sorry, this is Stephen again. I think it's important to maximize on that choice element. But beyond that, you'll find that because of the past schoolwork they've done, a lot of the students come in and think very generically about the problems. And if you can get them refocused on how is this affecting you personally, and activities like what we talked about, what's the city look like in the future, make sure it's their city. Make sure they're thinking about where are you in this picture. And if we can get them to think about themselves or their family as they're solving these problems, then it becomes more engaging.
Yeah, that's a great point, Stephen. Students are being able to put themselves into the projects may be helpful for, helping them to make those connections between the actual work that they're doing. So awesome. Have any of you encountered any challenges that you would like to share with the group, and maybe we can talk through those to see if we can help in any way?
I'm a little challenged with, for example, the Facebook group. Sorry, I have not used Facebook for many years. I'm on Twitter only. So for example, if I wanted to post those lessons, which I just sent to you guys in hopes that you can post it, and if I put it here on this page called Packful, do all of my personal network friends also see that I've posted that? Because I prefer to just post to you guys, right?
No, the group, Imani, you can chime in if I'm incorrect, but the group is a private group. And so if you post within the Packful group, your friends who are not a part of the group should not be able to see it.
Oh, okay.
Well, actually, it's a public group, so they actually can see things, but we don't control, like, we're not actively, if you post something there, it's possible that people can see it because it's public. But
right, but it's not like on my timeline, right?
That's correct. It won't go to your timeline. It'll just go to the Packful group.
So that's the question.
And just something for everyone, to know is that the Packful group is actually set to a quote work type group, which is a setting in Facebook that limits the amount of information you personally are sharing from your profile with the group. So the only thing that other people in the group can see is like your name and maybe your title. There's a limit to amount of information, so that's intentional, but the group itself is public, and so other people can certainly stumble in and see things.
So Monty,
Okay, thank you. That helps.
they would have to actually go into the Packful group and then they would be able to see it, correct? Like it wouldn't just show up on their, they wouldn't be able to see from a specific.
Yeah, it shouldn't normally just show up on your Facebook wall or something. If you posted it to the Packful group, then that's where it would stay.
And so I have a question. So if you never use Facebook, you're excluded from this.
No, the Facebook group is just one extra option for community. So if you are on Facebook and want to join the educator group and others who want to communicate with each other, you're welcome to do so. And if you don't, that's okay too.
No, but with the hashtag is a tweet.
The hashtag
Well, the
can be
hashtag
used.
is actually, go ahead.
Oh, I was just going to share that the hashtag can be used. We're watching the hashtag on Twitter, on Facebook, and on Instagram.
Okay, that's what I want to make, that it is also on Twitter, because as I said, I don't use Facebook.
Yeah, I'm a Twitter user myself. So
great.
Alina's watching Instagram, I'm watching Twitter, and Monty's watching
Okay.
Fair enough.
We all live in different places,
I've been posting on Twitter. That's why I asked that, because you'll see my handle, I have Juliet P37, and you'll see I've actually put out some videos with the Packful.
Oh my goodness.
So
great. And how did you tag those, just so I can
I may have tagged it Jacobs Institute. I'm not even sure if I tagged it as far as I might have tagged Packful.
I think if we're all using that hashtag, you want to use the JI Changemakers,
yeah, now
right?
I know. I'll use the hashtag JI. That at the time I didn't know that hashtag.
Okay. We'll try to keep repeating that so we can see each other's work.
So
Thank
you
you so
know what
much.
I'm going to do? I'm going to retweet and use a hashtag.
There you go.
And just so for everyone's reminder, what we're really hoping for with the hashtag use is also to share the progress you and or your student teams are making through the challenge, so that we can kind of celebrate their success and share it with others and inspire. So that's partly why we're doing the hashtag, and also like helping to encourage sharing on social media. It's really so we can all see the work that other people are doing and kind of continue to, continue that excitement and continue to support each other.
Yeah, and I'll just say for me personally, I really believe this, that sharing and showcasing your work, whether it's through a pitch competition or on social media or with your parents or whatever mechanism the work gets out to the public, is so important as part of the innovation process. You've gone to all this trouble to investigate and ideate and prototype and develop, and it's one layer that I think we can help students with. It's not a necessary layer, but I think it's an important layer.
Hey, here's Sasha again. I just wanted to ask, are there any restrictions when you are posting on those social media websites? Is there anything specifically, like, do you want the whole process on there, or is there a restriction on what it is that you can post and what you can't post? I know that doesn't make any sense, but
I don't think we have any restrictions, do we? That you guys can think of? It's really snippets. Is it a picture of your reaction? Is it a robot that got built? Is it? We don't care. We just love seeing whatever you have to share.
Wonderful.
Right.
Thank you.
That's exactly right.
And so my hashtag is JI Changemaker.
Changemakers, yes.
With an S?
Changemakers. Aha, there it is. That's the problem. Okay.
And don't feel like you have to post on all three. Of course, if you do, great, but you don't have to. Choose one. We wanted to just provide several mediums for you. Like if you're more comfortable on Instagram or more comfortable on Twitter or Facebook, you can just choose one. We are keeping up with all of our social media accounts just to make sure that we're catching all of the photos come in. But I don't want you all to feel overwhelmed. I see the comment from Sasha saying, it's hard to keep up with so many, but you don't have to. We will do that. So you just post in the one that you feel comfortable with, and just focus with working on with your students. We don't want that to be a burden on you.
There, I just posted.
Awesome, thank
or
you.
Or retweeted, I should say.
Well, is there anyone else with a challenge that you may be having? If not, we'll keep it moving to the next question, which would be, what would be helpful to you from the administrative team in the future as your team progresses? Is there anything that maybe you came across and said, oh, if I had this, it would be more helpful, or I wish, I could have had this? Is there anyone who has anything that they would like for us to just keep in mind?
So I have I wish I would have had, and I don't know, it may be possible that I did have and didn't have access to. But basically, I took some time before getting my students on Packful to do some general skill building and some community building within groups, and also to do some independent research of the SDGs so that I felt like each student had a baseline when they were coming in and making decisions about which one to focus on. With that being said, I didn't see that I could access the 3 phases that they're going through until they officially created a project on Packful. So it would be great to know if there's a way to get access to that information prior to them creating a project, or if not, is it possible to get access to that? Because going back to my comment about wanting to put the benchmarks and wanting to plan ahead, it was challenging for me to anticipate the needs that I was going to have to plan around, because I didn't get access to all of the different things that they were doing in all of the phases until they actually went ahead and created the groups, if that makes sense.
If I understand, I think I can answer that for you. One way to do it would be to actually, and we've actually had these conversations, what's the best way to display the information for the teacher in advance and share that, whether it's in the teacher's guide or reconfiguring the software. Right now, you can create a project for yourself in your own account, and it would unlock those 3 phases. You can see all the activities. So if you ever just want to look ahead and do some planning, that way you don't have to log into a student account or look at a student's account.
Okay, that's super helpful. I thought about that, but I didn't want to create a project in case I couldn't delete it for whatever reason, and then all of a sudden I'm like stuck in this space. So that's good to know for moving forward. And maybe mentioning that.
And it's also worth mentioning that you actually can delete a project. So anyone who is associated with a project can delete a project, so long as it has not had any actual official activity. So if they've never linked any documents or submitted any phases, then the project can be deleted. And you can do that by going into the edit project page, and in the bottom left, there'll be a delete project button available to you if the project is able to be deleted because there's no real progress.
Okay, thank you for the info.
Anyone else? Okay. We will move on to the Ideate phase. Just out of curiosity, has anyone had any teams who have attempted to do projects or the activities within the Ideate phase?
E3 started Ideate last week. My class didn't get through the whole thing, and we had an abbreviated class time because of an assembly.
Okay.
And I really wanted to focus them in on the process of ideation. But some of our classes did get through a lot of it.
Okay, wonderful. Did anyone find that their students jumped right into the Ideate phase, like as their first phase? No, I know it's, Packful is non-linear, so I know that, that's how it was built, but sometimes students do follow the linear path, which is to start with the understand. So I was just curious to see if anyone had any student teams who just kind of jumped into the ideation phase. Well, we wanted to talk a little bit about ideation and what it is, and then to answer any questions that you may have as your students begin to matriculate through this phase. Ideate is basically your phase where you state the problem and you brainstorm the solutions to the global goal that was chosen. And it's an opportunity for students to, really write down just all their ideas, collectively. No idea is a bad idea. As a matter of fact, that's one of the activities. It's called the worst idea. But it's just encouraging everyone to just kind of lay out all of their ideas on the table and then narrowing it down to the best one that they will be focusing on for their actual pitch. And so we have a few activities within the Ideate Phase. One is how might we, then we use the example, how might we provide flood victims clean drinking water in order to prevent illness from unsanitary drinking water. And I like that particular activity because it really encourages the students to narrow down the details for their actual ideas. But we also have other ones like Brainwrite, which is an activity that fosters collaboration. Sometimes within student teams, you may have a student who has a very strong personality and says, like, we should do this. But that particular activity just doesn't end with that one idea. It allows for other students within the group to actually add on to that particular idea. And so, you know, I just wanted to have an idea of maybe how's that working out for your students. I know most people are still in the understand phase, but Stephen, you said that you've had some of your students kind of start that. Has that been going well? Did you find that thus far, because I know they're still within it, did any students have any challenges? Were there any like group dynamic issues there with the ideas?
I think there's, my observations, there's a little bit of a change in pace and structure when we go from understanding to ideate. The understanding activities are a little bit bigger and a little bit broader. When we get the ideate, it's very much inside ideate, it's a very linear flow, a very go from this step to this step to this step, and can be done in quick succession. And so I think that was a little bit refreshing for them and allowed us to pick up the pace a little bit.
Awesome, awesome. And I think, I know someone mentioned the team form that we have within Packful, you know, that this would be a good time, you know, just in case students, you know, maybe have some dynamic issues or someone may think their idea is better than the next. It would be a good time to reinforce teamwork and, you know, how that should be executed and, you know, respecting one another's ideas. That would be a good opportunity to discuss that there.
I'd love to share out what we did around that.
Oh yeah, definitely.
So I had them, everyone had worked in teams under the understanding. And at the end of the understanding, they each had to come up with their own challenge question, their own how might we question, which we did as part of understanding rather than waiting for the ideate, just because it fit with our schedule. And then what we did to start ideate was we ended with a challenge question fair kind of thing at the end of the last semester. And we came in this time and I had them vote on what challenge questions they wanted to see the class pursue until we narrowed it down to challenge questions for the number of groups I wanted to run. And then I had them start picking first, second, and third from the challenge questions. And we did this all dynamically and live and built up the teams with the group leaders being the ones who posed a challenge question and the teams built around their questions, which again goes back to providing them the choice around that. So that's then that gave us a standpoint of having a team leader whose challenge question it was and heading straight into ideation from there. And they were able to reconfigure the original groups and build new groups as necessary right in the platform so that smoothed out the mechanics of getting all the groups set up.
Awesome. Thank you for sharing. Do we have any other comments around this? Okay, well, we would like to just open up the, you know, with our remaining time, we would just like to open it up for any questions or comments that you may have in regards to Packful and your students in progress.
So I have a quick question, and it's regarding timing in terms of implementation. So I'm actually doing this with another unit that I'm doing, a global dialogue unit. And so it works because the SDGs are kind of a source for both. But my question is, as I move forward and we kind of get into the formal phases, I'm having a hard time deciding on whether I want this to be a unit that goes from beginning to end, or whether I want this to be a project that's integrated through like days that they work on it on a weekly basis. And so it sounds like Steven and maybe others have some experience in terms of timing. That's kind of the space I'm in as I look at my curriculum map for the rest of the semester. I'm wondering if it's better to, launch a phase, give them some time in that space, do other things, or if it's something that I should treat as a traditional unit where we go, I know that we're going to bounce around in phases, but just in terms of, are we looking at it in a block of time, or now that I've launched it, is it better to have a day that we return to it? And just any suggestions on timing and implementation would be great.
We have design thinking as a once a week class, so we're a little different boat. But what I have struggled with this year and what we'll be changing for next year is we gave it too much time. We allowed too much time in the phases. And what I'll be doing next year is running a series of design thinking projects. So I'll do I do, we do, you do type thing where the Changemaker challenge is the you do part of that. So that I go through the design thinking process multiple times. If I was running it, as you're saying, I would definitely look at days as opposed to doing it out, because the time in between, the thinking time, the creativity demands a little more time separation.
Thank you, Stephen. I would comment just for others to know that we do have a few folks who are in the challenge that started using Packful several months ago, and Stephen is one of them. So when he's talking about the length of time, it may be a little bit different than your personal schedule if you just recently joined us for this challenge.
This is a shift away, but I just wanted to ask, when you're in the ideation phase, or if you've worked with it before, or in your class, these types of brainstorming activities, do you have any particular software or activities or tools that you use to facilitate brainstorming and the development of that open-mindedness and creative thinking? Can we just explore that a little bit?
I'm sorry, can you repeat the question, please?
Question is, what types of tools do you use? So whether it's software, whiteboards, butcher paper,
okay.
activities.
I'll tell you if I can chime in. What I have my kids do, as you talk about brainstorming, and they form their groups, and because we have been doing other things in sustainable goals, I have them do Flipgrid, okay? So they have to, and I give them a 2.5 minute, which sometimes can be too much, but my teams typically are 5 to 7 people. And so they have to come up with what it is they're going to be doing. And then they have to agree to tell me using Flipgrid, okay? And so that gives me not only, it gives them the brainstorming because they know what I'm looking for. They've been with me enough times. But I also now have a, how should I say, artifact that this is what you guys said you were going to be doing. If you're going to be changing it, give me another Flipgrid. So I use Flipgrid as a way for them to brainstorm. I have documentation that this is what you said you were going to do. This is what it looks like. It also gives them the opportunity to collaborate and practice their communication skills, which is something I need to make sure that they're doing as well.
Great. Really fun idea.
So we have to pitch Post-its, right? I mean, Post-its is the classic ideation brainstorming tool. And the advantage of Post-its is that it gets them to both write and draw pictures, and to work individually and have a tool they can then go through the rest of the steps where they come together and share ideas and then do affinity mapping and that type of thing. However, Post-its can be problematic from just managing lots of small slips of paper over multiple class sessions. I threw them into Trello this year without any introduction to Trello, and it seems to be working okay. Trello gets us part of that. We don't get the graphical element, but we do get the sticker voting and the affinity mapping and all that using Trello.
How do you spell that?
Trello.
Thank you.
I have a couple of like simple activities. Like one thing that I did that I thought was super powerful was I literally screenshotted the SDG tiles from the Packful website, and I created a graphic organizer, and I just asked, why is this meaningful to you? Which I think was independently as opposed to in their groups, because I felt that that was really helpful when we got to the understand phase, because here we are talking about, you know, debunking assumptions or looking deeper into assumptions. Some students don't even know that those assumptions exist until you ask them to think about it, and then they put it down on paper. Another thing that maybe isn't as helpful for the ideate phase, but it's helpful for the group work is, and I'm happy to share resources, I do skill builders that are unrelated to the content. So actually today, the groups had to work on something called island maps, where they each had like grids with islands on them, and they couldn't see each other's cards, and they had to describe accurately and carefully, and everyone has at least 5 cards, and so they learn that they can't get through it without each other, which is a good lesson to learn when you're asking them to work collaboratively. So I think those skill builders are super key before you even dive into the issue. And I also think some independent reflection for the group members, so that there's some sort of baseline and there's buy-in, as opposed to that stronger voice taking over. And then I would say, like, brain dump the heck out of it in the ideate phase. I love using their journals just so that they can brain dump, and just, again, I want to emphasize, like, offering that independent space for students to brain dump, so that those quiet ones, or those ones with the abilities that don't, you know, stem in the leadership space, are still able to contribute. So that would be a couple things that I could share.
Okay.
Really
I
nice.
guess I'll pony off of that. I use interactive notebooks, which are also, I guess, journals. So I teach them from the beginning of the year how to write an engineering design report. And one of the first components is the ask questions: who, what, when, where, why, and how. So all the students have to, like, take time, write in their independent journals, and then collaborate. So the 4 C's, they have to critically think. So they have to ask the questions, what the problem they want to solve and what solution they want to come up with. And then they have to communicate with their group with the questions that they were asking during their brainstorming phase. And then they're going to have to collaborate and find out within the group which ones are going to be hitting the topic for the project that they are trying to run, and then come up with creative ways to be able to put out that project, to have that output. So the interactive journals is really helpful for me. And then once they get to that portion, they can transition into the learning management system in Canvas, and through Office 365, they collaborate through the OneDrive channel, so they can share a document with each other, and they can also share ideas through there, and then also through groups on Canvas.
Nice. Thank you for sharing that. Any more questions? Okay. Well, thank you all for joining us for this webinar. We just want to remind you that March 3rd, we'll be touching bases again, and we will cover the prototype phase, but we'll also use that time to just kind of get more feedback from you and just share. You know, one thing I really appreciate about today's webinar was we had an opportunity to, you know, share ideas, share resources, and just collaborate. And so that's what Packful is all about. So we encourage you to, you know, just join in our next webinar with our Facebook group that is also a community of support. If you see any questions come through and you have some wonderful activities or strategies that's working within your class, feel free to share it through the Packful Facebook group as well. And then last but not least, we encourage you to post photos or videos on our social media channels using the hashtag #JIChangemakers. Lisa or Monty, did you want to add anything before we close?
No, I just wanted to thank everybody for being here. It always gives me good energy to hang out with teachers. So that's really nice on a day when you're not feeling well. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you everyone for all your help in joining us on this journey. So thank you.
Thank you. All right, everyone. Well, until March 3rd, have a good evening.
Okay, thank you so much. Goodbye.
You're welcome. Bye.
Night all.
Good night.